Welcome to Inspirational Transformational TV show. Amy Whitney here today with my very special guest, Barbara Goodwin. Barbara has shared with us today a story that will inspire any woman. I promise you that much. She takes us on her journey starting at age 59 when she returned to university, and from that point forward, how her life unfolded, how she found her passion, how she started to travel, how she embraced who she was. It is such a lovely story. The interview is filled with valuable information about hypnotherapy, about treating addictions. It's an absolute pleasure and delight to introduce Barbara to you today. Enjoy the show. Barbara, thank you so much for joining Inspirational Transformational TV show.
Well, it's my pleasure, believe me. It's very exciting.
Now, it's very interesting. Normally I research people before they come on the show, but today is going to be the first time I hear your story, so I'm really excited as well. And we were just chatting a little off camera, and you said 59 was your pivotal year. So I'm going to hand it over to you and just ask what you meant by that statement.
Okay, I just think it's very interesting that a transformational is in your title as well, and that's the name of my hypnosis practice, is Transformation Center for Hypnosis. So I think that word transformation is significant on many levels. For me, my transformation began, like I say, when I was 59. I went into university, and that experience, I got my honors degree in fine arts, which has nothing to do with hypnotherapy, I know. But that was the magic of it, because the experience of university itself was transformational to me. Mm-hmm. Simply because I kept saying, how did I get this old and not ever have heard this? You know, I was doing women's studies in astronomy and all this, and it was all new and so exciting to me, so revelatory, things I was learning. In particular, women's studies, that was one of my courses, and I missed feminine. You know, the feminist movement. I missed it all. I was having my babies. I didn't have time for anything except these 3 babies I was trying to raise. And so to learn the journey of women throughout, and then I was very interested in art. I had been an artist before I started university, and so I began to introduce feminist strategies, feminist ideas into my artwork, and it was really helpful. So all of the trip through school was very multifaceted, and the art was the center. It was what I was majoring in, and yet I was learning about me more than anything, more than the academic stuff. I was learning about me, who I was and what I could do, and what was possible. And the second year, I was so thrilled with what was happening. And I was winning awards and things, which I was never been interested in high school. I was just totally skipping school all the time. And so to suddenly be on fire to learn was a new experience for me. And so on the second year in university, I took myself to Paris. And I had never traveled alone. I had to go home and tell my husband I was going to go to Paris. And he said, Paris, France? And I said, yep. And so off I went and took myself to Paris, and that in itself was for me to travel alone, to learn how to take a plane and a train and all that by myself. I'd never done those things, you know. And so that was the beginning. And then the next one was Ireland, and I began to just get the bug to travel on my own, and I continued to do that. But when I finished, when I came out and got my honors degree, I came away from my university experience knowing that I had something to say to other women, mature women. And I didn't know what it was yet, but I knew I had something important I had to share. And so then I took myself to Toastmasters so I could learn how to talk. I mean, you wouldn't believe that I don't know how to talk. But I knew that I had to be able to speak in public. Right. And so I went for a year to Toastmasters. And I can't speak highly enough about Toastmasters. They were such a help. Then I started getting gigs, places to speak, where women would attend wellness institutes, libraries, wherever I would, a gig came up for me to speak, I would speak, and became sort of a motivational speaker. Nice. Without putting that label on it. And one day, I had been asking my audience, just a small audience, maybe 40 or 50 people, who would they be or what would they do if they had no limitations whatsoever? If they knew they couldn't fail, and there were no limitations, who would they be? And the room went so quiet, and you could hear a pin drop. And I sort of had this feeling, I was so moved to think that if you ask people a question that's a good question, it's like a meta question, it'll send them inside themselves. And that was such a thrill for me. And then I knew, at that moment was my big moment where I knew this was what hypnosis is. This is what hypnosis is, when you take people inside of themselves. And so the next little piece of magic happened. I had decided to be a hypnotist, didn't know how to do that. And I met my good friend Susie at the coffee shop the next morning, telling her that I had something important I wanted to share with her. She came in, she got books under her arm, and she said, I got something really important to tell you. She just got a job with a hypnotist. Now, how's that for serendipity or synchronicity? Yes. And so this person, Gary Becken, his name is, he's still a practicing hypnotherapist in Wakefield, actually, and he allowed us to go to him to observe and to teach us about hypnosis. And she and my other girlfriend, Judy, whom you interviewed as well, the three of us went for some time, and then they got as much from it as they chose. But now I was on fire. That this was my path. Wow. This felt right. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so he said he could take me right up to certification. He would teach me up until that point, but he couldn't give me certification because he didn't have the qualifications to do that. So I had to go to Toronto and get my actual, formal training and my certification, and that's what I did. And then I was a practicing hypnotherapist, and then I needed guinea pigs. So I had all my friends, I had all my relatives. I was hypnotizing everybody so I could get the practice, to get confident enough to be a certified hypnotherapist and have some success in that. So that was, I'm going to think, maybe 6 years ago, where all of that happened, and now I'm practicing from my home. Pretty well 3-4 times a week now. Yes. I like it that way because it gives me time to have a life too, to travel and do what I want. So I like where I am. The place I'm at right now in my life is a wonderful place to be because it, as I was saying, it's very free. Yes. And I can sort of call my own shots now. And hypnosis has become truly a fascination. It never goes away because I've always been interested in human behavior. I probably have more of a psychology background than I do an art background because I've always been interested in human behavior, even why do I do something. Yes. For instance, back many years ago when I was a smoker, I would wonder, how is it that I can be doing something that I abhor it? I hate smoking, I hate the smell of it, I hate everything about it, and yet here I am still smoking. How can that be? And I began to study that too. I began to study addiction and things like that. So it all sort of comes together in hypnotherapy. And then 25 years ago, at least, I quit smoking using hypnosis. A friend of mine had a girlfriend who was practicing to be a hypnotherapist and needed guinea pigs, just as I had done, when I was in that same stage. And my girlfriend said, why not go and try it? It was over in Orchard Park, New York. Why not try it? Maybe she can help you quit smoking. And so I thought, well, why not? I tried everything else. I tried acupuncture and all the lung society and everything I could find. I'd spent hundreds of dollars trying to quit smoking. And so I went over to this young woman, and the first thing she said to me, which is now the first thing I say to my clients, is tell me your story, just as you do with your people. And so I told her my story, how I'd gone even to AA to study addiction so I could understand what addiction is. Yes. And I had all the psych books, and I'd done all the research that I could to try and understand it. And this young lady said to me, who herself had very little training yet, and I'm not so sure she knew how good she was at the time, because she said, Barbara, you really fought this thing to death. You're a researcher. I can tell you love reading, and you love the research, and She said, but really it's easy to quit smoking. You just don't smoke. And I went, oh. And so she did the hypnosis. She sat me down and she did a progressive relaxation induction, which is just a guided imagery to relax you. And the whole time, because I didn't go anywhere, I wasn't unconscious, I could hear everything that was going on in the room, the dog barking and the phone ringing and all that. I kept thinking, well, I'm not hypnotized, but I'll cooperate. I'll just, why not? I'm here, I'll do it. So the session was finished in probably 15 minutes. I get in my car to go home, and I take out my pack of cigarettes, and I take out a cigarette, and I look at it, and I go, it really is easy to quit. I really just don't smoke. Put the cigarette back in. I did that probably 10 times between Orchard Park and my home, and it just continued. I just continued saying that to myself. Well, I understood later, move ahead now, several years later, where I'm studying hypnosis, I understood that those words somehow, for me, were what I needed to hear, that they rang true on the deepest levels of my thinking system, and that it was really called a post-hypnotic suggestion. The magic of that is that statement was said to me before she hypnotized me. Right. And yet, it's the thing that was my post-hypnotic suggestion. And that's kind of the proof that we are sort of always in and out of hypnotic state all day long. We are. If we're thoroughly engaged, we're deeply focused on something, if it resonates with our particular belief system, that's hypnosis. So if you're focused on anything, deeply focused, and it resonates with you on a very deep level, if you're learning something that's your heart's desire to learn, that's hypnosis. So it was amazing, because from then on, I never smoked a cigarette, one session. And it was even prior to the hypnosis that I had actually quit without having known I quit. So now it's wonderful. I specialize in smoking cessation, because I have my own stories, the best story I have, yes, that you can do it in one session. If your motivation is as strongly, as mine was. Mine was very intense because it had been years. I'd smoked actually since I was about 11. Wow. Stopping and quitting and stopping and quitting. But so I was like probably am an addictive personality. Yes. And I found that with clients. I usually ask that question, do you feel like you're an addictive person generally? And they almost always say, yes, I am. So I think we have proclivities towards addiction of any kind. Mm-hmm. And smoking is one of those things that really seems to nail us on a psychological level. And so hypnosis is the most successful method of quitting smoking. Not that it's 100%. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if I could give you the percentage of success, because it depends on a person's motivation. But it's more successful than the other modalities they are to give up the habit. So I really enjoy doing it, and I spend a lot of my time researching and learning more and more and more about the human mind, yes, more than the brain, because the two things are not the same, are they? Our brain is in here, but where's our mind? Our mind is where? Where is it? Amazing. And the more I study about the brain, the more respect I have for what we now know. We know now, neuroscience, for instance, has learned more in the last 20 years than in all neuroscience. Now, history of it, they've learned more in, say, the last 10 or 20 years. So we're living in a sort of groundbreaking time as far as learning how our own brain operates, and the capacity we have to heal ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that's where the idea of the brain and the mind blend, because we're using our brain to operate our mind and our thinking system, so that truly, the more I study, the more I begin to branch out into the metaphysical aspects of our life, so that it then becomes a spiritual practice more than it becomes anything else. And now I center more on that, the spiritual aspect of ourselves, because I now believe, indeed feel as though I know securely, that our healing is always internal. It's always internal. Even when we go to a doctor, the healing itself is internal. And we have the answers to all of our questions inside of us. And so I always tell my clients that I don't have any of your answers. You have all your own answers, but I got really good questions. And so in a way, you and I have that in common, is we have to have questions that are going to lead somewhere, are going to take people somewhere. Nice. And there are a lot of questions in hypnosis, in the intake that you use, that are called meta questions, because within the question there is an embedded command. And so an embedded command is important because it causes the person to go internally and look for their own answer. For instance, if you have children, I used to say to my kids when it was their time to do the dishes, okay, which one washes, which one dries? So the underlying assumption is they are going to do the dishes. Yes. So if you can ask a question that has that aspect, that there is a hidden assumption in it, the subconscious will hear the hidden assumption. And that's a form of hypnosis as well. So your questions are vital. They're absolutely. And then that actually blends into NLP. Yes. NLP being neuro-linguistic programming. And I have my certification in that because as I studied NLP, I saw how closely it blends with hypnotherapy, how the two now work hand in glove. And so when I write my scripting for my client, there will always be NLP techniques that are incorporated into that scripting as well. So,
can I ask you about
sure.
Bio-individuality? For hypnotherapy, if each person is an individual on that level, is there a set formula that you follow? Like, say, for quitting smoking, do you have a set sort of script, or is everything completely based on the individual?
It's sort of both. I can't really say yes or no because it's both. There is a template that you're going to use, but the scripting is completely individual because that's why the intake, the initial consultation is so important, because there you are learning your clients or your potential clients' modality of learning. How do they learn? Are they auditory, visual, kinesthetic, or gustatory? Like, how do they learn? Because if I don't know how they learn, I won't know how to talk to them in the way that they will resonate with. That their subconscious will say, oh yeah, I understand that. I understand those words, those feelings, and all that. So that it has to be tailor-made to that client. But having said that, there are books full. I have books full of smoking scriptings. Right. And then I will maybe just go and look one up, and then I'll adapt that one to the other. So otherwise, you're going back right to stage one again and working all again. So you want to save time and to find out which ones usually work the best. Yes. Then you'll sort of start sorting out which ones are the best ones, generally speaking. And once you find what the real problem is, then you can go to work, because smoking isn't it. You're looking for what it is when they come and say, I have a problem with smoking. And the it is what is driving, what is the belief system that's in place that's driving this urge, whether it's smoking or whatever we're addicted to, whether it's food or biting our nails or whatever it is we're addicted to. This behavior has a real, there's a part of us that believes there's a really important reason for maintaining this behavior. So that's what the it is. The other, the smoking, the overeating, all of those things are simply the symptom. And that's my disappointment with modern medicine, is it treats the symptom without searching. You go to a doctor and you'll spend maybe 5 minutes in that office. So I've sort of gone the way of homeopathy and naturopathy, because you get an intake there, you'll get an hour intake. They need to know a lot about you because they're looking for the it. Yes. And that's sort of what I do with hypnotherapy as well. I'm looking for the deeper behavioral patterns. And I really, because of NLP, you don't have to know all their stuff. You don't have to know all. It's not psychotherapy where you're going to go delve into all that. Often the client will want to. They'll need to tell you their story because it's very painful for them. And of course, I'm open to listening to it. But the subconscious knows the it. And that's what I've just got to help them to remember, like I say, to remember who you are. Because I find so often when they've been long into a behavior that they really dislike. It disempowers them. It makes them feel, even though they might be the president of a bank or something, they're totally empowered. They feel helpless and out of control because this one part of their life is out of control. And that's really, really bad for self-esteem, to think that we can't do something or believe that. So a lot of my work, I feel, is to help this person rebuild their self-esteem and remember who they are. And I use that a lot. I one time was privileged to go to a session where there was a drum healer. And it was really an amazing experience for me, because as he was drumming, you know how they'll drum all up and down the body, and as he got close to my ear, he said, "Remember who you are." And that was so profound. It was like that lady who said, you know, it's easy to quit smoking, just don't smoke. Yeah. When he said that, so I get these little inputs that come to me from wonderful people that happen, you know, to come into my orbit. And it was a very profound thing for me personally to remember who I am. But also I knew it to be a lesson that if I can help a client remember who they are, to remember their own heroism. I get mostly women clients. Probably only 10% of my clients are men. Right. And so it's a great many women that come to me, and I ask them their greatest strengths. What's your greatest strength? And they'll say, "Oh, I can knit. I'm a good friend. I'm kind. I'm honest." And then I'll say, "Well, didn't you tell me that you just went through a horrible divorce?" "Yes, I did." And then I'll say, "Don't tell me that you're nice and you're a hero. Like, I can only guess what you've been dealing with over the past couple of years to get the kids all straightened out and the money all straightened out, those things. What are the qualities you had to call forth from yourself to get through those moments that are so difficult?" We all deal with really difficult times, and it's just life. We're gonna, you know, it happens. The T-shirt says it happens, and it does, and it will continue. And so, how do we handle that? How do we deal with it in a way that is effective and that we feel good about? That we've done the best we can. Well, those are the moments. Those are your defining moments as a woman that make you remember who you are. So you begin to understand, the harder the ordeal that you go through, those, when you turn around and look back at what you just walked yourself through, all of those qualities, you can take those and apply them to this relatively small problem of smoking. That you can transmute all of those tremendous heroic qualities that you've had and have evolved as a woman throughout your lifetime. You can take them and transmute them onto this, like I say, this relatively small issue. It isn't small, it's serious for us because, as we know, smoking kills people. Yes. And so it's very satisfying to me. It's very thrilling to be able to simply get people to remember that they have everything they need now. Like we all do. We have it all. We have everything we need now. And we just have to remember that it's there and find good ways and healthy and spiritual ways of bringing it out of ourselves.
Now, hypnotherapy changed your life in that you stopped smoking. But once you learned hypnotherapy or got into that phase of your life, did everything shift for you? Relationships?
Everything.
I can imagine.
Because I have that theory, you know, how if we change a single cog in the wheel, like it shifts, then it all shifts. So of course, all of your relationships change, your point of view about everything changes, your knowledge about your own possibility. Now you understand that there is no limits except those we place upon ourselves. That we have no limit. Those limitations we perceive, we've created in our own mind. So I ask the same question. My primary question is, how did I get this old and not know this stuff? Why did it take me so long to know all this stuff? But what I love about it, being in this sort of what the archetypal people call the crone stage, I like to tell young women of your era that it only gets better. It gets really exciting. That you begin to actually come into yourself. That empowerment comes to you, and you get this sense of self it's really very gratifying. It's very pleasing, and you feel so grateful to have this sense of passion at a relatively later time in life. So I feel pretty lucky, I have to say.
Do women need to travel through their 30s and 40s, or the message that you're giving that it's all within, can we grasp that at a younger age? Can you talk to the 20-year-olds and they can grasp it, or do we need war wounds, if you want to call it that?
Well, I would hope that they wouldn't take so long. You know, that I think women are now far more informed than I was. You know, I grew up in the 50s and the 60s, very bought into the, you know, the picket fence and the lady in the apron, you know, Miss Susie Homemaker. That's who I was, and that's where I was content in that role, because I thought that's all there was. You know, that was the way the culture taught how women were. Just look at some of those old commercials, you know, that, you know, you're Susie Homemaker, you know, adoring your fridge and loving cleaning and all that stuff. And, you know, one of the joys of my life now is I don't have to cook. I very, very rarely cook now. I feel like cooking is, you know, heating up a TV dinner. Maybe I'll say, well, I cooked tonight, but I don't have to cook anymore. But there's a lot of things I don't have to do anymore, and it's very liberating. So the young women today that I speak to, because now they understand that they are not limited, that they can have it all, if they're willing to work at that. Because as you know, it's not difficult to have children, or even have one child, have a career too, be married, be a wife, be a mother, be a homemaker, and have a career as well. That's a really, really difficult. But what it does is it causes you to pull out of yourself that heroism that's innate in all women. I very much admire women for that. Not that I don't admire men too, but I see that heroism more in evidence with women, because we tend to pamper our men. And they don't have to call on that heroism quite so much as we women tend to have to. Maybe that's why we're the ones that have the babies, you know, because we can, because we're good at it and we know how to do that. You know.
Is there a shift going back to like the divine feminine and the earth mother and the female movement? Is there a big shift happening at the moment?
Absolutely there is. It's so interesting to me, because in this recent trip to Peru and Bolivia, lots of times, because it was called a sacred journey that we were going on, so we're looking for, particularly for the sacred energetic spots and so forth that the Incas had created in the rocks and that. We climb up into those and, you know, actually stand within the rocks and, you know, feel all this energy. And everywhere we went, the shamans would come, or the elders in that town would come and speak to us. And you sort of have this idea when you go there that it's all very primitive and so forth, and they're so learned in the ways of their culture, not necessarily educated in the Western sense of having gone to university, but educated in some ways far beyond, because they have the spiritual knowledge and they have the folklore passed on from many hundreds of generations. So even when you look into their eyes, you see the wisdom of the ages there. You feel that from them. And everyone in every different town we ended up would begin to talk about feminine energy and how there is a Earth Gaia is now, they didn't use the Gaia's name, but I did, because that's the first thought that came into my mind, was that Gaia is now active all over the globe. And some of the different elders that spoke with us would say things like, don't be too afraid that the earth is tumultuous right now. Gaia is cleansing. Don't worry too much about the glaciers melting into, because the energy that's now released is hundreds of millions of years old, is now released into the seas, and we need that now. Gaia needs it. So it made you look, you know, look at the things that we see around us, because they're very upsetting things now happening earth-wise, you know, the earthquakes and so forth, and it gives you a different perspective than the typical religious perspective on the end of the world, which apparently was supposed to happen yesterday and did not. So there is this tremendous, particularly in women. I was owner or part owner in a gallery, or partner at the Jordan Art Gallery for 5-6 years, and I would make a point of speaking to be like little gaggles of women would come in on the wine tours and stuff, and I would always ask them about their lives and their viewpoint about that, about where women are different now. Their attention is now shifted more to the spiritual aspect, that people want to know about themselves more now than they ever did. And they're sharing with one another in ways, and you'll find that all over the city you'll find there's little meetings going on. There's interesting discussions being discussions about crop circles and past life regression and out-of-body experience, and I go to all of them. I go to as many as I can because they fascinate me so much.
Yes.
That I've gone to workshops down in the States, down at Omega Institute often. I try to go there once a year because they have wonderful teachers there that, and it's a holistic school of learning. So it's not academic learning, but you're learning about the spiritual aspect of our lives. So I think that I don't know if it's our aging that brings us to that, or whether it's actually a huge movement that's now, we're in the era where this enlightenment is, our search now is for enlightenment. And I really think that James Redfield was significantly, I think that his Celestine prophecy really was a prophecy, even though it was a fiction book.
Yes. But
when I return to the ideas that he presents in that book, that's what I see happening now, is this letting go of that which is physical and turning our attention now to that which is metaphysical. So I think that's why the hypnosis so appeals to me, is that the people that are coming to me have that same mindset. And when someone is in that state, it's a beautiful state to be in, it's the most healthy state we can be in, is a hypnotic state, because we are totally relaxed. We're in a homeostatic state where everything is pH balanced and the whole thing. And I get to be in that same bubble with them. Nice. So it's very interesting after the session is over, because I'm still sort of in this alpha state myself, and I can't remember their name. I go to write out a receipt, and I can't. What was your name again? It's very funny because I realize I've got to wake myself up too, because I've gone with them.
Yes.
And I adhere a lot to the Ericksonian way of doing. Milton Erickson is sort of like the grandfather of hypnosis, and his books are revered by most hypnotherapists that I've ever spoken to or contacted with. And so because his hypnotherapy worked, and often in his hypnosis he would say to the client, "And I will go with you." And it's sort of comforting to them, because there's a little fear involved sometimes. If people don't know what hypnosis is, they're afraid of that they're going to get lost somewhere, or that they'll be unconscious, or they might say something they didn't want to say, get stuck in hypnosis. Like these are common fears. And of course, if you're going to engage in something you've never done before, of course you've got this barrier that comes up of fear. And so that's my job first. My first job is to allay that fear, that this is a safe thing, it's a beneficial thing for them, and that they can heal themselves, that this is a modality they can use for everything in their life. Learn, because all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. They're not going to go anywhere unless they want to. And so usually I require a client to come to me for 3 sessions, minimum of 3, because they need that reassurance. The first session, they'll usually not go quite as deeply hypnotized as they would the second or third time, because the fear factor still needs a little bit of softening. And once they have had that first experience, I go for, in my notes that I take on my client, I go for the wow factor. When they open their eyes, if they say wow, I think, wow, I got it. I got the wow factor. So I feel like I've succeeded in the actual procedure. If they open their eyes and say, well, and that actually just happened yesterday. I had a gentleman, and it was a male client in my room, and he went very, very deeply, and it was his first session. Wow. But having said that, the reason I think he went so deeply is that he has this wonderful sense of he's open to anything, he's ready for it, he'll try, he's unafraid. And when he opened his eyes, he went, wow. And so I'm thinking, yay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And can you just, I'm not sure if it's difficult to say because everything's different. I've never had hypnotherapy before. What is the procedure? You've touched on a few things like the meta question and making people comfortable, but when I come to your clinic, what happens?
Okay, so you're at my office and we've done the intake. I found out what it is, your particular challenges. There's something that you want to change. You know, my little business card always says, what's the one bad habit you'd like to change? Hypnosis will help you with that. So you've come to me with something you want to change. And then I'll explain to you how change takes place at a particular level of the mind. And that's not beta state, which is our regular waking state. It's beta. It means our brain waves are going about 14 beats per second. So we want to slow those brain waves down. And that's what hypnosis does. And the way I will do that is to use a progressive relaxation induction on you, which is pretty well known. Yoga people use it, meditators use it, where you start talking about how you're going to relax your body. And I will maybe say something like, maybe you'd like to sit back and relax and let go of all the busyness that you came here with, all the busyness of your day. Maybe you can leave it outdoor in a basket outside my office and just have the intention to relax. And once you have the intention to do something, it usually happens because your body listens to your intentions. Your subconscious listens to what you intend. And so maybe you'd be comfortable to just take off your shoes, take off your glasses, relax in my nice comfortable hypno chair. I usually move them from the sort of business chair I have, the straight back chair, and suggest to them they'd like to move to the hypno chair. That in itself is kind of a way of getting them to relax a little to the comfy chair, to the hypno chair. So there's a suggestibility to them that they're going to be comfortable. So there's all this sort of subliminal things that you're slipping in there to make them more and more comfortable. So once you begin to breathe a little more slowly, I will begin to remark to you, oh, I notice you're breathing more slowly, isn't that good? And I'll just sort of praise you and encourage you to relax. I'll talk about slowing your breathing, slowing your thoughts down, and the thoughts that come into your heart, there's always, our conscious mind's always, there's always this sort of little yammering going on, this little, somebody called it committee in your head goes on. So there's this thought, well, I don't think I'm doing this right, and can this be, I know I'm not hypnotized. There's all this sort of critique going on. And so I encourage them to let that go, just let it float on by. Those are normal, those thoughts are just what the conscious mind does. And I have set some music going that's actually designed to take the brain to the slower wavelength, the alpha length, so that it's about 60 beats per second, and that is about where you want to be. You don't really have to be very deeply into hypnosis for it to work. You just have to get to the level of the mind where change occurs, because change doesn't happen on the waking level. Otherwise, all of our, our promises to ourselves, our Monday morning diet would always work. We don't have to do it every Monday. But the level of the mind where change takes place is that alpha level. Right. So that's where we want to go and talk to that part of the mind where the change needs to happen. And so after that, after I had seen that they had slowed their breathing, and they were pretty well deeply, and there's a few deepeners, we call them deepeners, where we'll use maybe counting them down. We'll deepen them if they choose to go more deeply relaxed. I will say we'll go down a set of stairs, or some kind of visual guided imagery I'll give them, maybe to a nice quiet place they've been before, things like that. And people are familiar with those things. And there's a definite purpose in using those, because what the therapist is trying to do is to have the brain let down that critical analytical factor, that protective filter. The first question that deep part of the brain is going to ask when you go into a new situation is, will this kill me? There is that very deep reptilian question, life, death question, will this kill me? And so my job is to have that part of the brain understand, no, it's not going to kill you, you're going to like it. So all that talk, that's what that's about, is talking to that little part of you that thinks, is this going to kill me? Yes. And so the way that the therapist does this is through storytelling, through metaphor. You can tell, or even just refer to Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, and how the Tin Man and all the guys who I've forgotten who all they are, but the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion, they all thought they needed something. And at the end of the story, what happened? They realized they used all of the qualities they thought they had to get from Oz.
Yes.
And so we already have that hardwired in us. Even the era that didn't get stories, bedtime stories told to them, like the new era coming up, they don't know about bedtime stories. They didn't get, like we as children, my era, Grandma was always reading to us, so we have them sort of embedded into us. But now we have Disney channels and things like that, where the children are still getting those archetypal models of excellence, that the good guys win and honesty is the best policy, and all of these rules have been instilled in us since early times in our growth. And so the hypnotherapist uses those innate knowledges to suggest the change is so easy. It's so easy. And you say, remember Dorothy. Look at how hard she thought that was. You don't have to tell the whole story again, or you can use any kind of storytelling.
Yes.
And the subconscious mind will pick up what the moral is. They'll connect it with the particular problem you presented it with, and it will fit those in together. So really, the less I say, the better it is. That I need to trust that the subconscious will take care of that, and make them understand. There's I might give you, if you came to my office, one of the first things I give people, even before the hypnotherapy, is the garbage bag thing, where they have to put everything they own. Everything they own in this big giant garbage bag. All the pictures, bicycles, kids, aunts and uncles, grandma goes in the bag. Everything you own, everything you've ever owned, your camera goes in the bag. Everything's in that bag. And people of your life, people you love, people you don't love, they're all in the bag. And then you take off all your own clothes you're wearing and put those in the bag, so you're standing starkers with this big bag of everything you've ever had, and every teacher you've ever had, all your material things you own. And then you start to take out of the bag only those things which you love and which you feel you need. And so they, first thing they do is take out their clothes and put those back on, and then they take only out their favorite books, their favorite pictures, their favorite toys, their favorite people. And I have to remind them that these people don't know that you put them in the garbage. Like, Grandma doesn't know she's in the bag, because they get all guilty. They get all guilty that they put Grandma in the bag, or Mom. Sometimes it's Mom. And when I do this for groups, I often do this if I'm teaching at Brock or someplace, I will get them to do the garbage bag visualization, and then I always say, how many left Mom in the bag? And about half the room only have left Mom. So us mothers have to remember that we're the ones that have the power to create some pretty tough stuff. I suppose that the clearest idea I can give you about this going in and speaking directly to one's subconscious is that the language of the subconscious is not necessarily verbal. It's more emotional. It's more storytelling. So like I say, you tell a story, and that critical analytical factor says, it's only a story. It's safe. It won't kill her. Yes. So there's that aspect that you're going to overcome and get this person relaxed enough by telling the stories, but you're going to have had some pretty critical preparation you've made. That's where your scripting comes in, is that you know the person's problem, basically, the basic problem. You figure out what the real it was in the interview, and now you're going to create a script that, and the metaphors and the storytelling and the imagery will be conducive for them going in and figuring that out. And you don't really have to know all their stuff. Maybe, I run into a lot of clients who've had severe abuse, for instance, as children, and they're still carrying that big load. And so I don't need to hear all that. Like, that's where I don't want to be a psychotherapist. So I don't really need them, because it doesn't help them to keep repeating that story. They've repeated it, maybe, it's become their drama. And so I would sort of have them wrap that whole thing up, and that it's somewhere in their body. That because we register thought on a cellular level, they are containing that. And so often I can ask them, where is it? That's like, roll it up in a big ball, all that negativity and bad experience. Roll it all up in a ball and locate where that is in your body, and they always know. The magic of that is they always know where that is. Or I can say to the smoker, where is the craving? when you have a craving, like close your eyes and remember the last time you craved, which was probably when you were in the car, or in the office even. And I'll say, where's the craving? And they'll always locate it. Usually it's around here somewhere. It's in like sort of in the salivary glands and things like that. But to me, the magic of that is they always know where that is, which is a very significant thing. Mm. That it maybe on some level, it really is there. And so what the therapist then does is have them objectify that. What color is it? What's its name? Mm. And one of the funniest things was, and because I get them to objectify their pain, objectify whatever the problem is, make it into a thing. Because pain, things like that are nonverbal, you got to get them to be verbal. Because it can't be, like a pain can't be a pain if you made it into an object, right. A color, a size, a shape, a noise, something like that. So this one lady had come to me from Weight Watchers, actually, which I highly recommend. Weight Watchers is a very successful program. But she came because she was starting to gain it back again, and she'd lost 75 pounds, and it was starting to creep up. And I said, well, why are you here? You have a system that works. And she said, because I'm tired. I'm tired of the fight. I'm losing all my motivation. So she really, she needed really to bolster her conviction that this was the way to go. Mm. So I said, well, when you have this feeling of, that you're falling back and you're failing on this and that you're tired, where is that? And she said, it's right here. So now we're talking this chakra, aren't we? Yeah. And I often think in terms of the energy centers of the body. And so I said to her, if it were an animal, what would it be? And she said, it would be a gerbil. And I went, a gerbil? And she said, so we started laughing at her gerbil. She said, no, she said, it's my gerbil. I can it's fine. It's fine. You can have a gerbil. And so I said, well, describe this little, and it was a little cute little gerbil. It was in here. And then I said, if it could talk, what would it say? And she burst into tears, this lady. And she said it would say, nobody listens to me. And she went into a whole litany of things that this part of her was crying to be able to say. And it was from early times, like in her life, things where she hadn't been given a voice. That and often, we can say, well, I blame Mom, I left Mom in the bag, but Mom did the best she can. She did the best she could do with what she had to work with. And so we can't really keep blaming Mom for it all. There comes a time when we have to take that little gerbil and look after it ourselves and understand that we have the power to heal that part of us which is in pain and which has maybe become a habit. Especially when there's some kind of trauma that's happened in our life, it becomes habitual for us to think of it to the point where we can't stop thinking of it. So there's all these strategies. You can have a stop thought. I say, okay, I'll use the stop thought theory on you. You can stop your own thoughts. Or there's all kinds of strategies we can use against these parts of us that are in conflict with our will. And so it's pretty interesting stuff because it's never boring. There's always a new thing.
I can listen to you all day, but I can see our time ticking. So I'm going to ask you one or two of the questions I ask pretty much everyone I interview. And the first one is, what has been your biggest inspiration?
Oh, my biggest inspiration? I have to say my travel. All the many places, like I say, all the Peru, Bolivia, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Texas, Sedona, all of those places within a year and a half span. The people that you meet, the wisdom that you see in the simple people in those countries, that we live with these paradigms in our head about what, you see the Peruvian ladies with the funny hats and the big skirts and the coats, and you think that that we're somehow smarter than them, or we know more, or we're wiser in some way, and there's always these wonderful inspirational stories you will see, and they teach you something new. And I have to say my clients are my greatest inspiration because I learn their heroism. And so it gives me a model of excellence. But the authors that I read, they're also my models of excellence, is that they have been around the block that I'm just starting to walk. And so I learn a lot from the books I read. And I read all kinds of books about everything, and spiritual things and philosophies and psychologies. I read as much as I can. I'm very hungry to learn. And that's another one of the blessings I think of my current life, is I have the time now and the means to search and satisfy all these curiosities that keep coming up.
And your final words of wisdom today?
Oh gosh, I don't have any words of wisdom. you know what, it's going to be something like some platitude, like eat dessert first, you know, or something like that. So no, I don't have words of wisdom. It's just keep looking, I would say. It's just know that there's magic out there, and that aging is absolutely awesome.
Thank you so much, Barbara.
My pleasure.
Barbara, thank you so much for spending the afternoon with me. It was such a treat to have an opportunity to hear your story. It's an absolute inspiration. I love the information that, of course, you gave about hypnotherapy, but the words of wisdom to all women out there that it only gets better. And hearing that and seeing you thriving in, as you say, your crone years, you're glowing, you're beautiful, you're successful, and you're loving life, the most important thing, right? So thank you so much for sharing it with the rest of the world. Many blessings and much love.